and I'm going to be your host today. Also, a huge thank you to Suffolk University Sawyer Business School for hosting this conference. Suffolk University hosts a lot of opportunities for learning both in and outside the classroom, and we really appreciate their partnership hosting the entirety of Startup Boston both last year and this year. Now, the goal behind Startup Boston Week is to connect the entire greater Boston and New England startup community. All industries, all startup departments, and all bootstrapped and funding stages for 5 lovely days of continuous learning. The team that creates Startup Boston Week is primarily volunteer, and folks working the conference today are volunteering as well. So thank you for attending this conference. It is a labor of love, and we appreciate you playing a part in our startup community. Thank you so much again for attending Startup Boston Week. And now, on to the session.
Thank you so much, Grace. And on behalf of the entire panel, we're so happy that you've joined us today. My name is Farah Hussein. I am an executive coach. I spent over 15 years in tech before I took my coaching business full-time about 9 months ago now. And I focus on helping women leaders increase their impact. Before we move into the panel today, I just wanted to give you an overview of what to expect. We're going to talk about the value of mentoring, how to find a good mentor, how to be a good mentee, and how to get the most out of a mentoring relationship. So just to get a sense of who's in the room, raise your hand if you're a student. Okay, thank you. Raise your hand if you're a founder. There's a maybe, yes, yeah, all right. Raise your hand if you're an investor. Okay. And if you are an ecosystem supporter, like a consultant, a lawyer. Okay, great. I think we got pretty much everyone here. So I am gonna turn it over to each of the panelists to introduce themselves. We can start with Dipanshi.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dipanshi Bansal. So computer engineer by education, a program manager and consultant by profession, and a problem solver by heart. With this insect in me, I came to the US 2 years back to pursue my MBA at Babson College. And that was the time when I noticed a big problem around mental wellness for students in the education space. And I just started building my idea into a solution, trying to find what is the problem and what could be the solution that could solve that. And I built my company Shine Co, where I help students navigate their life journey with confidence and resilience by providing life coaches and guidance beyond classroom. So this topic is really important to me, not only because in my business, I connect coaches with students, but because as an international student, I have seen value in coaching, and wherever I am today, it's because of my mentors and coaches. So yeah, here I am.
Welcome. And Wafa?
Awesome. So my name is Wafa, so to give a little bit of background, so I also moved to the US 11 years ago to do my master's in international development and conflict resolution. So my goal at that time was to be the head of the UN. After that, I started my own company because I discovered that if I join the UN, it's just like to see an impact on the ground is going to take a really long time, and I'm not patient. So I was like, it's easier for me to do my own company so I can see quick results. So I did my company for 5 years. We're connecting people with online work to do data labeling for machine learning. And about maybe 3 years ago, my company got acquired by another company called Cloud Factory, where I joined them to do, was like the head of a product focusing on their platforms and how do we automate things and build for scalability. And recently, this is my week 2, I joined C10 Labs to work on startups that's focusing on AI and solving big problems. So I think if looking back at my career trajectory, because I also did my undergrad in education. So thinking about my career trajectory, if I just went through education, I won't be here without all the mentors and the people that have supported me and finding the right people in the right stage in my life to get here. So I'm excited to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. And Tara?
Hi, I'm Tara Pillai. I've had a very zigzaggy career past. I worked as a journalist for about a decade, and thanks to the mentor community I had around me at the time, I made a pivot into startups and was hooked. And so probably for the last couple of decades, I've been working with early stage startups, first as a consultant, working with private equity backed companies, but also post-seed, pre-series A companies, doing marketing and business development for them. And then I had the opportunity to go work at Harvard, first at the business school and now at the Harvard Innovation Labs. And through those opportunities, I've probably worked with about 100 plus startups, many of them very early as a mentor, and have also worked with amazing mentors at the iLab. Alice Foster McCallum, who's here with us today, runs our mentor program, manages like 150 plus mentors. So learned a lot through her as well. But the one thing I think that's important to note, mentors are still part of my life. I'm a mentee as well as a mentor, and they have been super helpful in terms of my career trajectory and even my growth and learning. So think of yourself as a lifelong learner and use those opportunities to continue to grow and develop.
Thank you. And we do have a couple questions that we're going to run through with the panel. But if you have comments, questions that come up throughout the discussion, please feel free to chime in. We can start with Wafa. So if someone who has identified that they think they need a mentor is just wondering how to get started, where do you recommend they begin?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the first step is to identify what's your needs. Like, what are you looking for? Like, are you a student looking to get into a specific industry and a specific role? Or are you a startup founder trying to find customers, or you need help with marketing, or you need help with fundraising? So the more specific you are into what you're looking for, the easier it gets. So once we identify what I'm looking for, let's say I'm a student and I'm looking for to join a biotech company, and I want to focus on product. So this is like really specific. So once I identify that, I can go onto LinkedIn, identify people maybe with this title, and see which one of them are maybe first connection or second connection. If they're first connection, I would just reach out to be like, hey, I would love to get coffee and get some advice. I would not ask anybody to be my mentor in the first batch, because it's like I want to see if we have harmony. There's connection there. So I would go to this conversation, and even when I reach out to this person, you need to be very specific of why are you reaching out? And everybody loves to talk about themselves and their experience. So the more specific you are of what you would like, what would you like to get out of this conversation, saying like, hey, I'm very interested in your background. I'm looking into like exploring this area into my career, and I would love some advice. Can we get 20 minutes for coffee or a Zoom call and wait to see what this person will say? But do the work. Like, say like, okay, what about next week, Tuesday or Thursday from 3 to 5? Is this time good for you? So like, be more specific. Like, you need to do more of the work before, like, you don't want to put work on people. Like, you want to be very prepared on what you want to talk about, and also where you want to meet and how. Like, is it in person? Is it via Zoom? Whatever tool is it you want to say. And also, before coming to the meeting, the more prepared you are, like, have your questions prepared, because you don't want to arrive to a meeting where you're like, I don't know what this person does, and I'm just here because I'm looking for someone to mentor me. Like, it doesn't work this way. You need to be very prepared and like really ask them for advice, and ask them like how they did get here into their career, what they've done, what their journey was, and how they pivoted from marketing to be a product leader in their space. So like, the more specific you are, like, just come from a very curious place and just trying to understand how this works and how they got there into their career. And I would also reach out, instead of reaching out to just one person, I would reach out maybe to 5 or 6 people from my network, or maybe if they are a second connection, I would reach out to someone from the first connection asking like, hey, I saw you're connected to this person. I'm very interested in what they're doing. Would you be willing to make an introduction for me? If they say yes, so this is my first connection to make connection to the second one, I would send like a very forwardable email. So saying like, hey, I saw you're connected to this person. Thank you for willing to check with them. This is a blurb about me. I am so-and-so. I'm in my 3rd year, 4th year, or whatever in this career, looking to do this. I would love to get some advice. And I'm very impressed by their background. So it's like a help me help you approach. I don't want to put the work on any other person who's willing to make the connection for me. So the more work you do, the more like if someone send me a forwardable email, I'm so willing to take the extra mile and go make the connection versus like I have to draft everything from scratch. So help me help you approach, very specific and very like be more specific of why you want to reach out. And then also always after like, sorry, I'm going through all the steps.
It's okay.
I think also after like you meet with this person, it's very important to send a thank you email saying like you was very insightful, And if this person also was like telling you like, I would love to introduce you to so-and-so, like follow up and say like, I would love this introduction. And if you meet with this person, go back to the first person and say, thank you so much for this connection. I met with so-and-so and it was great. So like next time, if you want to like get another introduction, this person is more likely to introduce you to more people because you're very engaging and keep them in the loop. So yeah, it's just more, you need to be more proactive, more specific. And then like once you start building this relationship, you can ask this person if you want them to be a mentor, like that's like down the road of the relationship, and see what if it's benefit for both ways.
So I heard prepared, curious, specific, bearing the load, doing the work,
Yes, do the work.
being grateful, and follow through. You mentioned
Yes.
closing the loop.
Yeah, because I think a lot of time you make, I don't know if a lot about you guys, but a lot of time you make introduction to someone and you never hear from them back. And they come back in like 3 months saying, can you make another introduction? You're like, I don't want to burn my network. I want to understand, like, was this connection useful? Was it not useful? Like, you want to get feedback too, because you don't want to burn your network, the people you trust, and be just introducing them to other people. Like, also, like, I always go and check with the person saying like, hey, Farah, I'm like, so-and-so is very interested in your background. Would you be willing to chat with them? Because I don't want to start like doing like a black box matching without like getting the yes from both sides.
And I saw Dipanshi been nodding a lot. What would you like to add?
Yeah, as a student, definitely LinkedIn has been a great platform to find mentors. And in addition to that, I found events and hackathons as another great way. So as an entrepreneur working on my business, I have been in different events, pitch competitions, hackathons, and I have found my mentors there as well. It's important to find the right fit. Like she mentioned, you need to look at which specific area you want to find mentor in, and then go about talking with them. You cannot go tell someone be my mentor in the first place. It's like a relationship or a friendship. You can't say a stranger be my mentor. So make sure that you have 2 or 3 meetings at least, or even like more than that, to understand if this person understands you, is able to believe in you more than you believe in yourself. So then go about finding a mentor in that way, reach out to more people, and then see which one is the right one for you.
So some shopping around.
Dating, basically. Swiping.
Find someone who believes in you more than you believe in yourself. Tara, what advice would you give someone who's wondering how they can determine whether a potential mentor is going to be a good fit for them?
Yeah, I just want to take one step back because my colleague Alice is here. And so one of the things I want to say is leverage your existing networks. So, Harvard has an incredible mentor program for our slightly later stage teams. But a lot of the schools have those programs, and those people have been trained to be mentors. They're there specifically to mentor students. And so that's a great first place. Or your career center, if you've already graduated from a university. There's lots of entrepreneurial organizations within the Boston ecosystem that have mentorship programs. So make sure you leverage those resources, because again, those people have been trained. They're specifically there to volunteer their time to support you. I just wanted to step back also and just say, yes, I would treat this like informational interviews. And whether you are looking for a mentor or looking for a job or making a pivot, it's great to build out your network, because you'll always be able to lean on it from now and into the future. And so continue to put something in your diary or calendar every week to do one informational interview, and then leverage those networks over time. And those are people who get to know you. And even if it's like sending them a friendly email over the holiday season and just say, hey, just want to catch up with you, let you know this is what I'm working on. That's a wonderful way to build a relationship. Also, as I said, I think you're not going to be able to ask someone, if they haven't mentored people before, to be your mentor after even a few meetings. I've asked people to be mentors after about 6 or 7 meetings with them, and I feel like they're invested in me and I'm invested in hearing more from them. And so when you have that connection, I think that's the right time to make the ask. Also, to know that not everyone has been trained to be a mentor. So they may be able to help you in a very specific way. But what I found, especially if you're an early stage founder or a student, a lot of times you need a generalist. You don't need somebody with deep domain expertise. You need somebody who has entrepreneurial expertise and maybe in a lot of different areas, who can guide you in operations, leadership, fundraising, etc. So, also you may have a whole bevy of people who are like unofficial mentors to you. And so I think mentor comes with a very sort of big obligation to it, but it could be something a little bit lighter even, and they could be someone you lean on just to talk about marketing or business development or product roadmap or whatever it is. So just have that in your mind, that you don't need just one person, and maybe a group. I'm sorry, I did not answer your question that you had.
That's right. It was integrated into your answer, how to determine whether a potential mentor is going to be a good fit for you.
Yeah. I think one of the big things is it's somebody you trust and you're willing to be vulnerable to. People that I can help are people who are honest with me about where they're at and what they're doing. I've had a couple of teams, when they talk to me like they're selling me. And I'm just like, I don't know how much I can help you, because I don't know if what you're telling me is a sales pitch or it's actually what's happening within your company. So, you have to be on it, be willing to be honest and transparent, and trust that person. At the same time, you want to know that this person is going to keep whatever you're telling them confidential, and is a good listener and empathetic, and that the relationship, the trust piece, goes both ways.
Wafa, what might you add to that? What qualities to look for in a mentor?
I think like just to add what you added, I think it's very important also to feel safe. So if you're vulnerable, it's a safe space for you to be like, I don't know what I'm doing, or this happened, I don't know how to solve this issue. So I think safety, psychological safety, is very, very important in that context, because you want someone who believe in you, and there's a trust, and there's also this person is more empowering you and holding you accountable at the same time. So you don't want someone to put you down. You want someone to lift you up and say to you, okay, you've done this wrong, what can we learn from it for the next time? So I think that those things are very important, because this really makes you go extra miles to push yourself.
So if we take forward that theme of empowerment, Dipanshi, what advice would you give someone who's hesitant to seek out mentorship?
That's a wonderful question. So as a student, particularly when I came to the US from Asian country, students specifically, or like, new entrepreneurs are very hesitant talking with CEOs or like, executive people, because that's not a culture all around the world. So it's very important to go out and take that first step, because people are willing to help. You just need to ask for it. So make sure you go out, try, speak to one person. For me, it was Startup Boston Week 2 years back, which was the first event when I actually went out and spoke to two people, and I was overwhelmed with the crowd. You would have seen in this week as well. And I was like, I'm done. I cannot talk to anyone else. But out of those two people, I connected with one, and that person connected me with three more people. And I didn't realize, when I actually got into the web of entrepreneurial ecosystem in the Boston community, I didn't realize that I knew investors or founders who were connecting me with other folks as well. So go out, don't question yourself, but rather just talk to people, just talk about what your problems are. Maybe that particular person might not be able to help, but they might connect you with someone else. So the important thing is, ask for help, go and talk.
All right. Tara, you had mentioned sometimes it takes 6 to 7 meetings before you might want someone to be a mentor. Let's say you want to ask someone to be your mentor. How do you ask?
I think you get to a point, as someone mentioned, it's like dating, right? You get to the point where you realize you like each other. Spending time with each other is also mutually beneficial. They find what you're working on equally exciting, and they want to be part of it. And I think it's at that point you say to them, like, can we formalize this? I'd love to meet on a more regular basis. Do you have the time and bandwidth to do that? I'm hoping to achieve X, Y, and Z. And as Wafa said, like, coming prepared to all of these meetings, that's how you impress someone. Like, when I meet with a team and they actually come back and do what I suggested they do, like, I'm always, okay, check in the box. They listened, they iterated, they made progress, they came back and showed me what progress they made. And so I want people who are highly motivated, who are coachable, who are willing to take advice. And not everything I say may be relevant, or, but that they think through it, and either we have a discussion why it may be good for them or not good for them. And I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Oh, that's all right. This was when you're ready to ask someone to become your mentor.
Yes, sorry. So I think after all of those pieces are in place, it becomes very clear to you if there's a connection between that person or not, and whether they're willing to commit in a bigger way to you. Some of the people who have mentored me, I felt like were really excited to be part of my journey. And also, I tried to be helpful to them too, in ways like sending them articles or information in areas that I thought may be exciting or interesting for them. So I didn't feel, you also don't want to feel like you're just taking. It's also nice to be able to say, this is a mutually beneficial relationship.
And Wafa, how would you sustain that relationship?
So I think so we need to understand that also, so that sometimes you need mentor in certain time. So it's not the same mentor you had when you're a student. You're going to have if you are founder, until you're founder, and which stage. So I think it really depends where you are in your stage and your needs. So sometimes those relationships don't go beyond 5-6 meetings or 5-6 months. Some of them, they go beyond that. So it really depends on your needs and what the mentor is offering. So I think it's important to understand where you need to walk away from this relationship if you're not getting the most benefit for your time and the mentor time as well. So I think it's very important to understand when you need to walk away and when you need to maintain this relationship. When I say walk away, doesn't mean you need to no longer talk to this person, but maybe just keep them updated and engage on what you're doing. But maybe now you're doing something very different, because nobody wants to waste their time. If you're doing something I don't understand and I don't have value to add, then it's not it's not benefit. It's not like really time wise to be spent. So I think that's really important to keep that in mind.
And
Yeah.
how might you casually close out a mentorship?
I like, because like there's no, we're not signing a document. So like I would like be more like saying like, if you're like, let's say you're meeting with this person once a month, you can say like, hey, this has been really amazing experience for me. Right now I'm gonna be focusing more of my time on X, Y, and Z. Is it okay if we check in every 6 months, and I would keep you updated? So this is like just a really low-key commitment, because we're not signing a document. This, unless you're a founder and you're like getting someone to be your advisor, that's a very different stage, because they're taking equity, etc. That's a very different story. But so I think like that's, or you can say like, now I'm focusing on this, and I really thank you so much for your time. I will keep you posted. So like nicely, and be appreciated and grateful for what this person offered you.
And a couple of you had mentioned before you could have multiple mentors at
Yeah.
once, given what your different needs are. Dipanshi, how might you balance multiple mentors at the same time?
Yeah, that's a great question. This reminded me of my last semester doing my MBA. It was crazy. I had like more than around like 10 mentors I was coordinating with, because of like different programs I was in or accelerators I was in. And that just like burned out me. So I think it's very important to keep a balance and make sure that you're not, clashing with the kind of questions you have with the mentors. Make sure you know why you are meeting them and being prepared for what you want to ask during the meetings. So make sure you have like those gaps and questions and agenda ready for all the meetings. Making sure sending them in advance for each of the calls, sending them the agenda in advance helps a lot. So I remember like the first 2 months were hell for me, but eventually I realized that I'll not make the best out of it if I do not plan things wisely. And then I started making sure that I'm creating a balance between how many mentors or how many mentors I should meet within a week. How should I make sure that all the action items that they have given me, I'm following that, and I'm working on all the agenda items, all the conversation that's happening. I think even having some metrics or some way of measurements for each of those meetings are really important. So I think, yeah, these are some things which we can take care of while dealing with like multiple mentors.
So preparedness and doing legwork has come up a number of times as a theme. One thing I'll share in my own experience, I love mentoring. I freely mentor. Now that I am a small business owner, I also have to balance how much I can mentor and give, especially because I'm in coaching. So there's sometimes if there is certain guidance people are looking for, it might actually make more sense for them to become a client rather than a mentee. So that's one balance I strike. But on the theme of preparedness and legwork, I coach a lot of people who are looking to become coaches for the first time. And when someone's not prepared, and I'm generally pretty generous and easy, but when someone's not prepared, it can hurt your reputation, not just with that person, but with potentially others too. So as an example, I've had a number of coaches who I've given, 30 minutes of mentoring time to. And when they show up, I discover that they haven't done any research on the industry. If they're trying to figure out what kind of training programs to do, they haven't Googled any of it. And so what ends up happening in those sessions is the work is all on me. So I'm trained, I'm letting them know what the different programs are, what to look for. And then it really turns into a training session, and it's not a mentoring conversation at all. And mentally, I make a note for myself, this person doesn't do the work. It's not someone I'm going to meet with again or refer to other coaches to meet with them either. Did you want to comment?
No, I was just going to say that, use those sessions for your mentor to help build a roadmap for you. That's where I've found mentors really helpful is that they can kind of tell you what you don't know, and kind of lay a framework for you and next steps, and then make sure there's accountability there. That's a second piece where I think there's super value, but what that means, you have to deliver on being accountable.
Yeah.
And I think another way, like just to add to what you guys saying, like it's just another approach. If you have an issue and you want to meet with your mentor to discuss it, so maybe have 2 or 3 options, and within these 3 options, you write like the pro and cons and why you want to do this versus this, and just come to this meeting. It's all about preparations, basically. Come to this meeting and say like, okay, like I have this issue. This is my options. I'm leaning more into this one. What's your thoughts? And how can we best optimize for the right outcomes that you're looking for? So the more prepared you are, and you can come prepared in multiple different ways. Just maybe you're seeking advice about how to be a coach, and you're looking into all the programs, or you can like be like, okay, I want to be ahead of product in biotech. How do I get there? And this is what I think the roadmap is going to look like. Maybe I need more experience here. Maybe I need to get more certification, but this is my thought process. Or you can come to this meeting with like, this is a use case, an issue I have. This is the solutions. What do you suggest me to do? So like, you need to think about like all the options, or like, and come really prepared to be like, okay, like we talked about this last time. This is the update since the last time I've done this, and so on. But today I want to talk to you about X.
Yeah. Anything you want to add that we can open up to the audience?
So I was just wondering, when we all were talking, I was like, we have to make sure that we understand that mentor is there to help us how to think, not what to think. So the role of mentor is like really important to make sure that we are differentiating that with a teacher who teaches us, but the mentor guides us, and we have to find our own path. It could vary, but we have to talk and figure out.
Great point. Any questions from the audience? We can start to gather. Yes, please, go ahead.
I'm also a fellow coach, so you and I will connect after.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I love about mentorship and coaching is creating those moments where there's like an aha. So in your mentor experiences, did you have an aha moment that like sticks out to you that like this person really helped me?
Maybe I can go.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So as a mentee, when I graduated, and as I was following entrepreneurship in my education as well, so suddenly after graduation, I felt like the pace dropped down for me, working as a solo founder. But the connections or the meetings with mentors helped me a lot. So it gave me a driving force to continue working, to give them the results or what I've been doing in the past 1 month. So that has been my aha moment, thinking about, yes, this was the reason I have a mentor, and that person is pushing me throughout to pursue. They trust me. So I am not working only for myself, but because someone else also trusts me, I'm working for them as well. So, yeah.
So there's accountability and motivation.
I think for me, like I work mostly with like early stage startups. So when I work with them, I like walk away with like so much excitement, and I keep thinking about their issue even when I'm sleeping. I'm like, oh shit, they should like think about this. And like I like the next morning I like email them this like, have you thought about this? And so like it keeps me more engaged, and I learned so much. Like I'm like, as a mentor, I walk away, I think maybe with a lot more than what I give, but it's just like a really two-way street. And like it's really like it's so fascinating when you're like really trying to learn about new industry that you have no idea how things works, and think about your experience and how like there's maybe new ways of thinking about like an issue, or like go to market strategy or whatever. So like I think like it's really rewarding, and you learn so much, and you get just the excitement and that you want to help them too.
Yeah, I think for me, being a mentee, I talked about roadmap and accountability. When I was launching a company, I felt like I was doing a million things. I was working on the operations part. I was trying to hire people. I was fundraising, and it was so overwhelming. And I felt very stretched thin. And I remember my mentor sitting down with me and taking a scrap of paper out. And he basically made a plan for me for the next 6 months about these are some of the milestones I think you need to hit. This is how you're going to get there. This is what you should focus on. And I just felt like, oh, this is what I need, because it's easy to attack everything at once and feel like overwhelmed. But he actually laid it out for me in a very clear way. And so for me, that was like an aha moment. And I think I've taken that sort of feedback or experience and applied it to many of the mentees that I work with now. It's like a lot of it is just helping them focus and create the path for them, and then make introductions or find them the necessary resources or supports. So I don't expect, and they don't expect of me to help them and be the answer for everything. A lot of it is about me opening up my network or suggesting they talk to someone else to get the necessary guidance or advice that they need.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question. So for someone who's interested in mentoring others and then kind of like been doing it, at their own time, do you have any advice or suggestions for like sort of like building a career around that?
Does anyone want to answer this? I know coaching is one path. Yeah. So one thing I would share is there is a difference between mentoring, advising, coaching, sponsoring. Sometimes all of those things can get conflated because some of the value that you might get out of any one of those roles could show up in someone who has another one of those roles. So you and I can talk more absolutely after this. What I can share about my own journey is I started my own coach training out of a personal interest. I thought this was just going to be a hobby for the rest of my life. But I was a people manager at the same time. And so a lot of the learnings that I was getting around coaching, I was able to apply at work in real time. And it absolutely helped me become a better people manager, because the more senior you get and in your career, especially if you're managing larger teams, your role shifts from being a manager to being more of a coach, because you're not doing the work anymore. So I think there's actually two paths you could potentially consider. One is to become a type of coach, but you could also consider being coach-like or mentor-like within an organization where you're leading other people.
I'm going to go off on that and ask a question myself really quick. What are the requirements to be a mentor? Can anyone become one, or is there something specific that you should have?
I love that. Does anyone want to answer that question?
Well, I'd almost like to put it over to Alice, who's sitting here with us, because she recruits our mentors. And I think within formalized programs, there's certain expectations of what they should or shouldn't do. I think, when you're asking someone who may not be a mentor on a regular basis, it's a slightly different ask. But I don't know, Alice, if you wanted to chime in about what you look for.
We are a pretty formalized program. We actually kick off our program at the beginning of every semester with a speed networking event that allows people to, on both sides of the table, to study each other and have some idea of who they're walking into meetings to get to know. But we are very lucky that we have a program that attracts a lot of really high-level people, and we try to make sure that there's a little bit of distance between their experience as a student and their experience as an entrepreneur, or their experience out in the business, so that they feel that the person that they're speaking with and that they're learning from is someone who has significantly more experience than they do in what they're looking for. But what we look for specifically depends on what that mentor is offering. Sometimes we have very specialized needs for teams, and so we're looking for folks who have depth in one area specifically. For our very early stage teams, people with really broad experience, as the panelists were saying, are really fantastic at helping them figure out what milestones should be next for them. So we just try to personalize it as much as we can, and make sure that we have a good selection of people who are offering very different things to meet the teams wherever they are.
And in an informal capacity, my personal perspective is anyone who has perspective and guidance to give can be a mentor. So, for example, my parents are immigrants. I did not have any professional network to lean on when I got to college, when I was getting my first job. And I think maybe subconsciously I was conscious of that. And even as a freshman in college, I started mentoring people who were in high school trying to figure out which college they wanted to go to or how to find their first internship. And so even at the age of 18, you could consider me a mentor because I had perspective and guidance that I could give because I was just a couple steps ahead of the people right behind me.
Yeah, I think I'll totally echo with what you said because you can be a mentor for anyone at any time. Age is not the limit, and it depends on where you want the expertise in. If there are new students coming in and you have become an alumni, you are helping them, you are guiding them, you can be their mentor. And if you are an entrepreneur but an early stage, trying to work around your own product, you might not be very much ready for mentoring someone in the entrepreneurship space. So it totally depends on what you think you are strong in. But one most important thing is active listening. A coach or a mentor needs to be an active listener to make sure that they're understanding and putting themselves in the mentee's shoes to provide them the right kind of guidance.
Yeah. Anyone else want to add? No? All right. I do want to make a plug for peer mentoring. Often when we think about a mentor-mentee relationship, we do think about who's several steps ahead of me, who can provide me with perspective, guidance, building that roadmap. When I was at Babson, this is several years ago now, in business school, I created a peer-to-peer career advising program because one of the things I noticed is a lot of my classmates would go to career fairs or career-oriented events, and they would try to network with the most senior person in the room, the CEO who was speaking, the CHRO who was speaking, and I would tell a lot of them, the job you're trying to get, that next step you're trying to make, your classmate who's sitting next to you had that job before they came into business school. And so it doesn't mean that it's ineffective to go to the most senior person in the room, but it might not be the most efficient. And in some cases might not even be the most helpful because the CEO might be so far removed from that analyst job that you're trying to get that you wouldn't even get as good guidance as you would from the person sitting next to you. And that applies if you're a founder, whether you're trying to start your own business, whether you're working at a startup, you're going to a larger company. Find people who are in this similar position as you. And it's possible that you can also just exchange your war stories and learnings to help one another. Any other questions in the audience? No? Grace, how are we on time?
We're good. We have about 15 minutes or so left, so we have a little bit more time. Or let me check that real quick. Yes, we have 15 minutes
Oh, we're
left, so
good.
we have a
Yeah.
little bit more time to chat. Do you have a question?
Oh yeah, there's a question.
Is mentoring always pro bono?
I always do it pro bono.
I'd say yes. If it becomes more formalized, then it turns into an advising relationship. So then somebody's looking for equity. And so for me personally, I'm advising like 3 companies that I mentored over a number, like probably for a year and a half before they actually had a cap table and were ready to offer that to me. And I wasn't expecting that. It's just that they wanted to keep the relationship going. So it can evolve and change over time, but generally a mentor, there's no expectation to pay them. It's when they turn into an advisor. So once you formalize a company, and if that's how you're using your mentor and you're going to them for advice on a regular basis, it's probably a good thing if you want to keep them into your network to have them become an official advisor of your company.
Yeah, I would say the same. And in my case, once I've met with someone many times, it might make sense for them to just become a client. And so that's where it turns into a paying relationship.
Okay, I have 2 questions. One, how do you navigate that change, that transition? Because I've had people who were mentor type people for me, and then at some point they're like, "Hey, why don't we make you a client?" I'm like, "I don't have $8,000. Cool." How do you navigate that? And then my secondary question is, as somebody who's, as a person who's starting something, how do you kind of navigate this person has so much more knowledge and everything they say seems actually really great, and realizing what is actually relevant to your particular thing? Because sometimes, I don't want to say starstruck, because that's not the right word, but it's just inspired by everything they say, but realize that maybe it's not all relevant. Those are the 2 things I'm curious about.
Why don't we start with the second one? Do anyone want to answer that?
I think the second one, I would go with, sometimes you meet with someone and you get like, oh my God, they're so knowledgeable, but it doesn't apply to you. So I think I would like really evaluate this relationship based on like what insights and tools you gain out of this conversation. And like, do you think this person you'll need this person in the next year or so to guide you to where you are, to the next milestone you want in your professional life. Some people you just meet on one time and it's just one time, because there's no more into it than this one time thing. So I think it really depends of if you think this person has the tools and the resources to help you to get from A to B, or is it just one time thing for just a very specific question. So I think that's you would know that once you decide, like, this is my needs, this is where I'm going. Will this person be able to help me to get to that point or not? That's how at least I would approach it.
Yeah, and like to answer your second question, it's very important to see if the mentor is able to see you where you are right now. So if someone is like, sharing a lot of information to you and it is not making sense to you right now, but you feel excited or see that, that person is so knowledgeable, that's not enough to make someone a mentor, maybe not at that stage. So timing is really important, and to make sure that the mentor understands where you are right now and what you need right now. So like obviously experienced people will have a lot of information, but what are they sharing to you at like each call or during different timelines? That's very important.
So go ahead.
I was just going to say, sort of think about it as a layering process too. We talked about near peers. And so near peers are really powerful in our program because a lot of my founders are fairly advanced in terms of their stage. And so finding someone who's 2 to 3 years ahead of them in a specific area is great. But I get people asking me to introduce them to CEOs of companies all the time, or people who are fairly senior who are kind of have star value, but I'm not sure are going to have the longevity that they need. And so I always tell them, layer up. Don't try to go for somebody in a C-suite right now. Get educated on the industry or sector or the problem that you're having, and use these informational interviews to inform yourself and figure out who's the best fit as a mentor. Because I think sometimes people go look for those star value people, and sometimes they're not the people who have the time or the energy or the focus to give to you.
Yeah. And to answer your first question, how do you navigate the mentee to customer or client transition? So the first thing I do as the coach is I kind of look for a few signals for whether it makes sense for someone to be a client. So the first would be like frequency of mentoring conversations. If I find like someone's trying to hit me up every week, it's typically because they have enough that they need support navigating through that. To me, a coaching relationship where we can really formally structure an engagement. There's some parallels in terms of goal setting and making sure you know what you want the outcomes of the engagement to be. But when someone needs that level of support, then I will suggest that a coaching engagement could make more sense. Yes, when it comes to the paying part, I mean, you're going from free to at least a few $1,000s. I usually help them brainstorm what resources they might have access to. So, for example, a lot of companies, even small companies, will offer some budget for professional development. I've seen a range from $1,500 to $5,500 that people individually have access to use. I know the 55 is rare. It's the larger companies, but even small companies, I've seen $1,500 to $3,000 available. So what I might do in that case is have we'll like structure a shorter engagement, or maybe we will be creative with that, how frequently we meet. So the cadence might look different for someone with a lower budget versus someone with a higher budget. But I like to, rather than go straight to we've talked so many times, you should be a client, first work with them to assess whether an ongoing relationship makes sense, a frequent relationship, and then 2, what resources might they have to make it possible. And if we really can't come to anything that works there, because I'm so connected to the coaching community and I do so much mentoring with coaches, I know a lot of coaches who are new to coaching, their rates are really low. So I'll refer them to someone who offers a really low rate, but who I've had enough exposure to that I know that I can trust transferring the person over.
If there are any more questions from the audience, I might steal one again. Oh, no, you raise your hand. You're asking a question.
Sorry, thank you. I know that this isn't a concern that's just restricted to women, but I do wonder if you have any advice for how people can navigate mentorship in a way that's safe for them, especially if it's in an industry that tends to be a little bit more male-dominated or for other reasons might be unsafe.
Thank you for that question. It's something we had talked about in our prep. Tara, would you like to?
Yeah, well,
Sorry.
I don't know if I have all the answers for this. Obviously, I always encourage people to terminate relationships where they don't feel safe in them. I will share with you that many of the female founders, not many, but a good number of female founders have had unfortunate interactions with male mentors, people asking them to go away for the weekend with them, asking them to meet them late at night at a bar, where, it could be innocent, maybe meeting later after work, maybe not. But if you feel uncomfortable, how do you manage that relationship? We've had people who are investors in companies, and like, what do you do if that's one of your key investors? So each situation is slightly nuanced and unique in terms of how you manage it, but I'm of the mind you terminate that relationship in a very polite way and very quickly. You don't owe an explanation. If they persist, people have ghosted someone. Again, I don't think that may be the right course of action in every situation. But you should always feel safe when you're dealing with a mentor.
Anyone have anything to add?
Yeah. So what I would say is, when you are talking continuously with the mentor, see if there are instances where you are feeling uncomfortable, and try to tell them in front of their face so that they know, and see if they're repeating it, or like see if that was intentional or not. And you see it repeating, then you're like that is a sign that you should see how you can terminate it, or find another way around.
Do we have any HR folks in the room? We don't. I was just curious to see if there's another perspective we could add.
I just
Thank
would
you.
add one thing, like use your own judgment, like how you feel in those meetings. Even maybe this person acts with this many people the same way. If that doesn't feel right for you, it's not right for you. Period. Like you don't have to justify, you don't have to go through tests, say like let's give them another chance or another chance. Like no. If that doesn't feel right for me, I would not show up again. Thank you so much. Very nice meeting you. We'll be in touch. Period. Like you don't have to put yourself in any situation that you don't want to be in.
Absolutely.
I can give a perspective on that.
Yeah.
I worked in hospitality for 20 years. Hi. I worked in hospitality for over 20 years in every possible position, including being a cook. And it's banter a lot of the time. And then there's the lines that get crossed. And sometimes it's not intended, sometimes it's not intended, but obviously as the person who's feeling uncomfortable, you might not feel comfortable saying to them, hey, did you mean that? Because either option is kind of shitty.
Yeah.
So sometimes going to HR, because I've also, that's the thing about restaurants, you learn how to do everything. I've had employees come to me and been like, hey, the chef says these things and I don't think he means it, and then that can start a back channel conversation, which if the person is told, hey, you're making these people uncomfortable, or just I've noticed your behavior is in such a way, tone it down, find an ally. Find an ally who is in a position to perhaps intervene in a way that doesn't have to be a whole political thing, because it might not be. It absolutely might be. Some people are just assholes, but it also might not be. And don't feel uncomfortable about being uncomfortable, if that makes any sense. Yeah.
Mm. And one thing I would say just generally about looking for a mentor who's a good fit, we've talked about like some of the qualities to look for, safety being one of them. One way, sometimes that's just an intangible feeling, if you feel safe or not. You could look for whether you share similar values. Sometimes you might be uncomfortable because the other person has different values than you do. Maybe it could be personality based, but it also could just be that their behaviors are a result of having a different value. And so that can be like one way to also just sort through in your own mind, where might my discomfort be coming from? Is it because something inappropriate is happening? Or is there a values mismatch? Or is it a personality mismatch? But to Wafa's point, you don't owe anyone an explanation for why you might be uncomfortable.
And just to add one thing, it's like safety is so important, like physical safety is so important, but also psychological safety is another layer to it. Like if I'm in a meeting and someone doesn't trust what I'm saying and they're like just like really putting me down over and over, like I no longer feel safe and confident to be around this person to share what I've learned or what my concern or what my challenges are. Because this person's gonna just put me down and say, oh, you're not confident. And then the more like it's just like really block your, like we all have imposter syndrome. And if like the mentor who's supposed to empower you and like lift you up, they're just pushing you down, like that's not a type of mentor that works for you. So you also need to think about like a mentor style. Some people love that. They're like, oh shit, this is like they feel more challenged and they like get more back into it. Other people, it doesn't work for them. So I think also you need to think about like, I don't think we have talked about this, is the mentoring style. Does this style work for me or it does not work for me to give me the psychological safety that I want to be able to be myself and shine and take myself to the next level? So use your own judgment, think about it and think like how you're feeling walking away from this conversation. Do you feel empowered? Do you feel like shit? Like if that the second one, it's not worth it for you, then you move forward with and find another person that match their style to you.
Go ahead. 1 minute. All right. Actually, I'll make one comment there because it's something that I do even with my coaching clients. Anytime I start it, there's two things I do. One, we formally talk about what are we both going to put into the relationship, because it is a relationship in the same way that a mentor-mentee relationship is one. And having that conversation formally helps you both understand if either side has expectations of the other that might be unspoken, or you may not have even thought to consider. That the second thing I do, this is part of my intake, but I will ask people, how do you want me to be with you? What do you want? What are you looking for from me as your coach? How do you want me to be with you when things get tough? And it's always interesting to me what the answers are from, they range, you know, a lot of people, I work with a lot of women, so I get a lot of be gentle but tough. That comes up frequently, but their responses are different. And so as you set up that initial relationship, have a conversation about how you want that relationship to be.
Amazing. Thank you all for your insight. Also for our audience members who participated. Love you guys as well. Thank you again for your time. We have a lot more in store both today and the rest of the week. We also have our career fair kicking off later tonight at 6 p.m. right here at Suffolk University on the first floor. Now, in this room specifically, the next session is going to be Money, 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 exploring executive compensation philosophies. Sounds pretty interesting. If that's not what you're looking for, and you need to change rooms, we have registration people right outside who can help you find where you need to be. If you are sticking around, please have your QR code ready so our volunteers can scan you in for the next session. And if you're joining us virtually, you don't have to go anywhere, and we'll be right back with your next session. Lastly, for those of you in the early stages of your startup, this Friday, you'll get the opportunity to share your venture at the Startup Boston Week closing party. You can check out the Startup Showcase open mic information at the welcome desk in the first floor lobby if you want to learn more. And that's it. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming.